Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Board of Estimate and Apportionment. Today on Wednesday, May 20th, 2020. Stephanie, would you like to call the roll, please?
Mayor Cruzen,
I'm here.
Comptroller Green,
Here.
President Reed. You're muted, President Reed.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay. Items presented for the first time. Item number 1, 20.098. Request from the Comptroller's Office for approval of contracts and leases for various city departments as listed on Exhibit A. Number 2, 20.099. Request from the Comptroller's Office for approval of intra-departmental and interdepartmental transfers from various city departments as listed on Exhibit B. Number 3, request from the Comptroller's Office for approval of transfers between projects for capital improvement funds listed on Exhibit C. Number 4, 20.101, request from the Comptroller's Office for approval of a resolution to withdraw the preliminary application for inclusion of the St. Louis Lambert International Airport from the FAA Airport Privatization Pilot Program. Number 5, 20.102, request from the Comptroller's Office Deputy Comptroller for approval to overspend accounts as needed to meet the city's financial obligation for the remainder of the fiscal year. Number 6, 20.103, request from the Comptroller's Office Deputy Comptroller Finance and Development for approval of Board Bill 16. This ordinance authorizes the issuance of tax and revenue anticipation notes, Trans Series 2020, not to exceed $65 million. Number 7, request from the President of the Board of Aldermen's Office, Chief of Staff, for approval of Board Bill 13. This ordinance allows for the transfer of funds from the parking meter fund to the General Reserve Fund in the amount of $5 million. Number 8, 20.105, request from the Director of Airports for approval of Board Bill 12. Ordinance approves the first supplemental agreement to the Airport Aid Agreement with the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission to reimburse the city up to $515,000 for direct costs incurred for marketing and promotion of air service at the airport and extends the original agreement to 12/31/20. Number 9, 20.106, request from the St. Louis Development Corporation Director of Commercial Development for approval of the final forms of bond documents as authorized by ordinance number 71088, which approved the issuance of up to $50 million of industrial development revenue bonds for Square Inc. Number 10, 20.107, request from the Law Department City Councilor for approval of a voluntary disclosure agreement which would allow the settlement and collection of tax-related gross receipts of a prepaid telecommunications service provider. That's the extent of the items presented for the first time.
Madam Mayor, I would like us to divide out item 1, item 7, and item 10.
Okay, that's fine. Is there a motion? Are you making a motion?
Hold on a second. I
would make a motion to approve items 2 through 6.
No, I would like item number 4 separated out. And I would like item number 6 separated out.
Madam Mayor, then I would move that we would approve items 2, 3, 5, 8, and 9.
Is there a second?
Madam Mayor, I would
We have a
also,
motion to approve.
Madam Mayor, before you, I would like item 10 to be included for approval, but I would like to have some discussion.
So
That's okay.
I prefer to have, as you said previously, I'd prefer to have item number 10 separated out.
Okay, that's fine. So that would be items 2, 3, 5, 8, and 9. I'm moving for approval, Madam Mayor.
Second.
All in favor of approving items number 2, 3, 5, 8, and 9?
Yes.
Did we get the motion right on that?
Yes, I think she said
5, 8, and 9.
2, 3, 5, 8, and 9.
That's
Okay.
correct.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor of items 2, 3, 5, 8, and 9, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Madam Comptroller, did I hear you?
Aye.
Okay, great. All right, items 2, 3, 5, 8, and 9 are passed.
Madam Mayor, I would like to move to item 10 for passage of item 10. Make a motion to pass item 10, and I would like an explanation or discussion to be had if there's a second. Hearing no second, I'll leave it up to.
I said second.
You said second? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, item number 10 is before us with a motion and a second. Is there discussion?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'd like to start it out by saying that for months, the law department has worked with the Office of the Comptroller and to a successful a conclusion to bring this item before the Board of E&A. And that's thanks to Barb Burkett, who is with us today, and if she would like to take the liberties to talk about her hard work on this item. Barb? You're on mute.
I'm on mute. Oh, uh-oh. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I hear you now, yes. Thank you.
Ground. I was contacted by Carol Isles from the Brian Cave Law Firm with this concept. She had a client who hadn't paid taxes, and she wanted to come forward and make a settlement so that they could get and then pay going forward. So the voluntary disclosure agreement that you see represents 4 years of gross receipts taxes from their telephone wireless provider service. There's also $118,000 approximately dollars of interest that will be coming to the city, and they're going to pay taxes moving forward. Without Ms. Isles coming forward, we were not aware of the identity, so we had no one to pursue. So this is the background of this item, and if you have any other questions, I'll be happy to share what information I have.
Thank you, Barb. I've got a few questions on this. It's my understanding that Alderwoman Green, not Alderwoman, I'm so sorry, Comptroller Green, that you asked the law department to put this on the agenda, and I'm glad that you did. So I want the $1 million, absolutely, but we don't know who this is. So that it seems to me that we should know who it is. In addition to that, it says that they've been operating in St. Louis since 2014. So that's quite a long while. I don't know why we didn't know about it. I think that's a fair question. And the other question I have is, well, who else out there is like that, who is also operating in the city of St. Louis without paying the gross receipts tax? And how do we find those tax scofflaws? You know, do they have a business license? I mean, I get it, they're paying the gross receipts tax, but do they have a business license? Have they been paying the earnings tax? You know, there's all kinds of questions that this brings up for me. And I'm just hesitant to vote on a blank settlement agreement without knowing more. Even though, yes, I'd like to have the $1 million, and especially now with facing, you know, potentially between this year and next year, $120 potentially $1 million tax shortfall. But I just think signing in the blind here is not something I'm very comfortable with. It also seems unusual to me that any settlement agreement comes to E&A, because I don't ever recall a settlement agreement coming before us before. So those are my concerns. So I don't know if you can address that or not, Barb.
Well, I'm afraid I can't address why we don't know who they are. I don't, I'm not going to be able to speak to that. But I know that who this particular anonymous one is because they had gone to an attorney who came forward and reached out and wanted to reach a settlement. She will not tell us the identity until we reach the settlement. There is a clause in the agreement that if that they can be, their records can be reviewed, and if they have materially misrepresented any facts, that it will be void. The agreement will be void. So there is that. This is very unusual. I have not seen anything like it. I can say that the state of Missouri and the city of Kansas City have statutes and ordinances that allow this procedure, this voluntary disclosure agreement for people to come forward and do some sort of tax workout. We do not have an ordinance like that, which would provide us a very smooth path, and perhaps we should, and perhaps that should be our next step if that is something that works well for the state and other cities. So I agree, it's quite unusual, and it was quite unusual for me to hear and explore. Originally, they had wanted to come forward with 3 years of back taxes. Case law would suggest that 5 years would be the statute of limitations. So they were finally agreeing to come with 4 and with the interest. So that is that sufficient answer to your question? There were a couple of questions in there, so I hope I'm hitting what I can.
Yeah.
And I can piggyback on that. As Barb has described, the city of Kansas City, state of Missouri, they have legal platforms that would suggest that it would make it more formal for companies that are not paying their fair share of taxes, or whether they have a business license or not. They have particular ordinances in place. And so I would agree with Barb that maybe the city of St. Louis would maybe want to pass an ordinance to capture those people or companies. And this one probably is a big enough company, since they're willing to pay, come forward and use a large law firm like Brian Cave, and willing to pay not only 4 years of back taxes, but interest as well. So I think as we go forward, maybe we look at this agreement and see if it is sufficient for us, or would we want to wait? I was convinced by Barb when she mentioned that the city of Kansas City had a settlement very similar, well, the same as this or similar, with this exact same company. So I want all of those companies out there that are not paying their taxes to come forward. And I think this would be one certainly that we could add to our budget, this $1 million, if this was something that we were clear about. But I did want it to be brought to ENA so that we could have just this kind of discussion.
I don't think it's proper for us to vote on this, not knowing who the company is. We could be in direct conflict of interest by doing so. We could have family members that work there. We can have gotten campaign contributions from any sort of thing like that. And if it's found that the terms are very desirable terms, that could be a problem for us. So I will not be voting on this today. And I will not vote on this unless I know exactly who the company is.
And Barb, could I ask again, they are saying, okay, they've been operating here for 6 years, right? And
apparently.
How many years worth of taxes is this?
4.
Why not
4.
6?
Well, I believe case law suggests that the 5 years would be the statute of limitations. Originally, I did ask them if for 5, and they had only offered 3, so that is how we arrived at 4. So, and as to the identity, I don't have that to offer, and I am certainly not withholding anything there. And so I guess that's sort of the other side of the coin. We don't have a way to pursue them, so it's sort of that's where we are right now. I don't have a way to track them or recommend suing them because I don't know who they are.
Right.
It'd be worthwhile for us to hire a consultant to find all of the companies operating phone service in our city. Because if this one owes they owe more than $1 million, frankly. They owe all 6 years since they just think that they're going to get by with a couple of years and not paying it. Barb, did so if there's one, maybe there's more, and we should figure that out. Barb, do you know if they have a business license to operate? Do you know?
I don't, because I don't know their identity. So I don't
Do you know if they've paid their earnings tax?
I don't, and I can't tell you because I don't have their identity. So I couldn't verify any of those things. I just came to our office and I felt it had to be shared with the office that collects this tax, and it had to be, shared. And so I'm bringing what we have here because it is, it is something that you need to know about. It is an offer on the table.
I understand that. One of the things that we're agreeing to do in here is we're agreeing not to tell any other taxing authorities about this.
Except to the extent required by law. So they're looking for some degree of confidentiality, except to the extent that's required by law. So.
Well, I believe that the Collector of Revenue's office has an agreement with the IRS to share data. I don't know what's in that agreement specifically. So I for one would like to not vote on this today, and maybe we can, is this, was this agreement drafted by the company's lawyer?
Yes, it was drafted by Carol Isles of the anonymous company of Brian Cave. It's been amended, but she did the original draft. I will say that the amount is fluid. It was calculated 4 years from this month, so it might be a different amount if, say, it were approved next month. Or I just want to throw that out there.
Why would it be a different amount? I mean, it might be more money.
If it's calculated on gross receipts and you're looking at them for, so many months that constitute 4 years, I think it would change. I don't know for up or down. I truly don't know that this business or its trajectory. It won't be the same number.
To us. Okay. Madam Comptroller stated that the city councilor has been working on this for months. When did this first come to your attention?
Oh gosh, I don't have a date in front of me, but it sort of came in as something that Mark Lawson had. I remember before when he left his position, and I first read the email, and I think it was very confusing. People were unwilling to really do anything because of the anonymous nature. We've never had any similar circumstance. So, but at some point I did call the attorney, Carol Isles, and when she began to talk about dollars and cents, I felt like I needed to get the information out to,
Oh.
you know, to
I'm
to
glad
the
you did.
office that collects the tax, and to see what, if anything, we could do with this information.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that. I totally agree with your idea here. So personally, I would rather defer this to the next meeting, and maybe we can get some additional information. I know there is a motion and a second on here, so I'm just giving you my preference if anybody wants to.
Yeah, there's absolutely no way do I think we can take action on this without knowing who that company is. We can take that up in closed session. So, can you inform them that we need that information, and then at the next regularly scheduled ENA, I think we take it up then, and we take it up in closed session. But we have to have that information to vote on any type of settlement agreement with a company. I don't see how we can do that. Barb, but I do want to thank you for all of your work
Yes.
on this. You did a great job. I really appreciate it. And reminds me of when I first became president of the Board of Aldermen. You sat next to me and helped me out for the first couple months. So I appreciate your work.
Yeah, I agree with that. The other thing, Barb, if I could say, they have to agree to pay their other taxes that may be due. I don't know what those are, since I don't know, who they are or exactly what they do. But, presumably they've been collecting these gross receipts tax from their customers, because that's how that works. If you look at your cell phone bill or whatever, the taxes go on there. So presumably they've probably been collecting them. They've probably been collecting them for the whole 6 years. So yeah, we need to know a little more if we could, please.
The attorney, I sent her the information. I assume that Giles is listening to this call and and is getting this information.
Okay, that's great. If not, you can relay it to her. That's great.
Absolutely.
So, okay, would anybody like to withdraw their second or their motion?
I would like to take the opportunity to withdraw my motion, Madam Mayor, of this item, since it appears that we won't be voting affirmative on this item on today.
Thank you for that. Okay, the motion and the second have been withdrawn with regard to item number 10, 20.107. Next item.
Madam Mayor, I would like to move that item 1 be approved with explanation of some items that was added on late in Exhibit A, page 5, CDA items. I have no explanation as to why these items that are quite large was added on in such a late time.
You said you moved for item 1. Which item?
Item one at the top of the page, 20.098.
So that this is the item number 1, Exhibit A, page 5, items number 20 and 21.
Yes, I would just like an explanation. I understand at the time of close to posting the agenda, this item came to the attention, Madam Mayor, of your staff, that it had not been added. It looked like it was pretty important, but I just did not get a chance to review what this is all about. It looks like it's something that we want to do, but I just like an explanation.
Madam Comptroller, just for clarification, are you making a motion for approval of item number 1, or just a motion?
Item number 1, which would include all of the items, which would include items 20 through 21, but I want an explanation of if that can happen. So that's what I'm asking, Mr. President.
But the motion is for adoption, but not just a motion for discussion purposes.
That is correct. It's for adoption.
Okay, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We have some discussion here with a question from Madam Comptroller with regard to items number 20 and 21. Madam Comptroller, it's my understanding that these are the last couple of pieces for the closing on Preservation Square. You know, we got a choice grant on that project before I was even the mayor, so probably 4 years ago or so by now. And what this does is allows for the final closing. Todd's walking in here. Todd, do you have any more information on this? Allows for the final closing on these pieces of Preservation Square. Do you have anything
I
else?
called Matt Moak. I had him on the phone there. He's the one that just run through his office.
Okay.
Matt, are you
So
there?
if it's acceptable, Matt, are you on the line? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to turn you up here. Matt Moak is here with CDA to explain, to talk about this. Normally he'd be in the room, but you know, we're doing this different. So at any rate, Matt, tell us about items number 20 and 21 having to do with Preservation Square, please.
Right. So the amount of choice money that needs to be set up and authorized to be used for this project, and when I say choice money, I mean federal C&I money that was awarded the city at $29.5 million. The amount that needs to be set up to be used for the project has increased slightly from what was previously authorized. I don't have the number right in front of me, but as I recall, it went up about $940,000 from what had previously been authorized. And it's really, it's not part of money we haven't previously approved pursuant to the Master Development Agreement. We approved the whole $29,500 back in February, but we're taking a little extra piece of that $29,500 in anticipation of the phase 1 closing, which is to occur here in a couple weeks.
29 million. 29 million, right, Matt?
The $29,500,000 was all approved pursuant to the Master Development Agreement, which we passed through E&A in February. But what we do is as we pull amounts out and get ready to pay them out, we bring those amounts back to E&A, and that's what this is in a nutshell. There's two pieces. There's a part of the MDA, the Master Development Agreement, that we're an additional piece that we're moving through. And there was also an increase in the amount of the additional services agreement to be allocated to improve the public streets and the other public works that are happening at the site. And that was increased as well. Those are the two documents before you.
And Matt, if I could ask, it's $940,000, 708 for Preservation Square 123 Landlord LLC. And then
Right.
it's $4,863,893 McCormick Barron Salazar and its affiliate Preservation Square 1 LLP. Those both have the same explanations here?
Yeah, and essentially, Mayor, what you just touched on is that in addition to the money being advanced here as part of the overall development for public works as well as for the housing construction, 2 new McCormick Barron affiliated names have been injected into the deal. And so the other part of this, and I tried to outline that in the summary I attached to the first letter, was to also seek the affiliate authority. You know, the affiliate, kind of like, it's not a name change per se, but Preservation Square 1, for example, is being put in place to do the housing construction that's going to commence on the site after we close financial here in a couple weeks. They are a new entity, part of McCormick Barron, but a new entity, so that's also part of the request to authorize them to receive the money.
Okay. Certainly, I know we all want to move Preservation Square forward and we want to make sure we're in compliance on all this choice money. I don't
Right.
have attached to the agenda anything from you. I don't know if you submitted it or not.
Yeah, it was the first letter. I had to email these letters over to Todd, but there were two letters, and one had a summary attached as the third page. I don't know. It was a PDF, so I'm trying to locate that right now. There's a P. When we can bring that over? I guess it was on the 15th.
Okay, since it's not attached, is this urgent or is
It
this?
is because they need to line out the money and the additional names because they are telling us just in the last couple of weeks, they indicated they want to close the phase 1 financial closing in early June. So it will be prior to the June E&A meeting, hence the rush to get this through now.
And so the question I have, these changes, these additions, with the money, I understand the explanation, but the additional company that would not have been in the original agreements that was passed by the Board of Aldermen, does that mean that E&A would be sufficient to approve an original agreement that was passed out by the board? Or is this like bypassing the board, or was there language in that ordinance that would require them to go back to the board or not?
Boy, I'm so sorry. Ms. Comptroller? I'm not sure who's speaking, but this break is terrible for me, so I'm having a hard time understanding.
Hey, Matt, hang on a minute. We're gonna try to turn this volume up on here so that you can hear better. One second, Madam Comptroller.
That's fine. Yeah, and I am looking at the two letters that came over, and the first letter does have the summary of the prior approvals, as well as a summary of the current requests. And the hope was, of course, that would make it easier to follow.
So maybe Todd could find these.
Yeah, I mean, it's to Todd and copy Linda. I certainly can resend this right now.
Maybe we should, yeah. Maybe we can move on to something else. And of course, I don't know how we would be getting it to you all.
Well, this is the Comptroller, and I'm all in favor of moving forward with this item, since it does look like it's important, but it would be a sad thing that to find out later that the E&A approval is insufficient and that it should go back to the board. So that's a simple question. Maybe a lawyer could kind of review those documents so that we will be in full compliance with the ordinance and the rest of the agreement.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble. I couldn't really understand that. I don't know, Mayor.
So Matt, let me see if I can repeat this. Madam Comptroller, correct me if I don't say this right. I believe what you're saying, Madam Comptroller, can you hear this, Matt? Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Is that, of course, we want to move forward. Time is of the essence on this, but the lawyers need to review to make sure that the change in the name of the entities or the addition of some new entities is that the approval of E&A is sufficient on that, rather than having to go back to the Board of Aldermen. Do I have that right, Madam Comptroller?
Yes, ma'am, you do. As you know, my motion is for approval, so I am all for moving this forward. But I did want to acknowledge that there were these huge changes, not only in dollar amounts, but additional entities added. And if these kinds of changes can be approved solely by E&A, then that's would make it sufficient. But if not, then are we going to be closing on something that has not been properly following compliance or complied with?
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah, if I may, I guess the insertion of new entities that are affiliates of Macquarie Bearing really has been going on for 6 to 8 months. That includes an LCRA, not-for-profit nonprofit entity that was formed, is referenced in one of these documents, Preservation Square 123 Landlord LLC. They are to hold the land, but also be a recipient of the funding for the public improvement. So I guess my only point there being, we've sort of been, it's not a name change per se, it's an additional affiliate of McCormick Bearing being authorized. And so that hasn't been a problem up to now. And by that, I just mean it's all entities other than the El Sherry entities, all entities that McCormick Bearing is using to carry out this project. And it hasn't been an issue in the past legally. In other words, we've been able to move those through the Board of Estimate and Apportionment without any other legal opinion, what have you.
Matt, let me ask a quick question on that. Is the successor entity have the exact same ownership as the prior entity?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Okay. Madam Comptroller, are you ready to vote on this, or
Absolutely.
you are? Okay. So there is a motion and a second to pass. I guess, let me say one more thing here, Madam Comptroller. It has to do with item number 1 on this Exhibit A list. It's a request from you to, Matt, I think we're going to hang up on you. Bye. It's a request from you to hire Lewis Rice LLC for $50,000 for professional services. Is this for legal services for your office?
Madam Mayor, this contract is to provide professional services as it relates to various issues regarding the operations of the Office of the Comptroller.
Yeah, I saw that.
Not part of what this request is about.
I'm sorry, say the last part again.
Legal services is not what this request is about.
Not about, so it's for non-legal services, other sorts of professional services.
Professional services regarding the operations of the Office of the Comptroller.
Okay. Okay, that's fine, since it is for non-legal services.
Yes, ma'am. This same law firm, Madam Mayor, has been hired for the assessor's office as well. Those
Okay.
professional services that this particular law firm is providing does not include legal services that I'm aware of as well.
Okay, all right, I understand, sort of. I understand well enough, let me say it like that. All right, so now, if there's no other discussion on item number 1, 20.098, we do have a motion and a second. All in favor of passing item number 1, please say aye. Aye. President Reed, I saw you, Comptroller. President Reed, aye?
I said aye.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, that's all right. I'll talk louder, speak up louder.
Okay, next item we want to take up here. We still have open items number 4, 6, and 7.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to ask for approval for item number 4. It's a request from the Comptroller's Office for approval of a resolution to withdraw the preliminary application for inclusion of the St. Louis Lambert International Airport from the FAA Airport Privatization Pilot Program.
Is there a second? Okay, let me just say I'm not opposed to doing this. However, I don't think it's the purview of the Board of E&A. Francis Slay, Mayor Francis Slay was the one who submitted the preliminary application. So let's, yeah, I'll have the city councilor look at this. I don't believe they've looked at it yet. So I will have them look at this.
So
If-
Madam Mayor, is it your intention, Madam Mayor, to withdraw the preliminary application for consideration of Lambert International Airport to be considered for privatization pilot program? Is that what I'm hearing from you, Madam Mayor, that you will seek guidance from the law department in order to withdraw the application from the FAA?
I will
that what
seek guidance from the law department. As you know, I was the one who terminated, pulled the plug on maybe with a letter that I wrote dated in December to stop this process. And then the Board of E&A terminated the contract that we had previously signed, I think in January. And so, yes, I'm going to seek counsel on this as to, what the proper form would be.
And you are intending to withdraw?
I'm going to seek counsel on this.
And the reason that it's so important, Madam Mayor, is that we are a national and international airport. We do compete across the country. We want to be clear to those travelers that, as well as those airlines that want to do business in our city. We have great relationships with the airlines that we have now. We want to keep those relationships, and we want to increase traffic at Lambert International Airport. And so as long as there is a limbo-like application out there, it does not send a strong signal as to the support that this city government can give to our precious asset, Lambert International Airport. So we need to have strong leadership and strong intent as to where we're going with the airport going forward. Will the city of St. Louis take up and build the capital needs of the airport, or will we remain in limbo? And so I think that should come in a short term rather than in a long term in terms of seeking out counsel, Madam Mayor. And I think this resolution today will give us the opportunity to move forward pretty swiftly rather than wait another few years. It's been approximately 3.5, close to 4 years that, as you had mentioned, that former Mayor Slay put this in motion. And I think that the withdrawal of the application would
Point of order, Madam Mayor. I don't think
play totally. Right now we're in limbo without it being totally withdrawn. So those are my comments on the matter. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I will seek counsel on this, and I hear your point of view on this. I think we should do it properly. And I honestly did not see this resolution. I think the resolution, I don't know who wrote it, maybe someone in your office, or maybe I did check a little bit ago with the city councilor. One person that I talked to said that they had not written it. So let me get some counsel on this and see what the proper way of doing it. I am in conversations with the airlines, and it might be interesting to those of the folks watching at home or watching at your office to know that there's every morning the airport is tracking the traffic in and out of Lambert, St. Louis Airport, or St. Louis Lambert Airport. Let me get that correct. And there was a period of time about 3 or 4 weeks ago when we had as few as 600 people a day or 800 people a day. Now it's running about 2,000 people a day, both in and out, 2,000 in, 2,000 out in that neighborhood. Normally we would have about 22,000 people a day in and 22,000 people a day out. So certainly it's a very dire situation with regard to the airlines and with regard to Lambert. So thank you for that. All right. Item number 6 and 7 remain.
Madam Mayor, I would move for approval of item number 6, request from the Office of the Comptroller, Deputy Comptroller of Finance and Development for approval of Board Bill 16. This ordinance authorizes the issuance of tax revenue anticipation notes, Series 2020. and not to exceed 65 million. There a second?
Second.
So motion and a second. Madam Comptroller, you want to tell us about this? I believe, and I'm sure this is something that we do every year, correct?
Well, yes, Madam Mayor, prior to my becoming comptroller over 25 years ago, the former comptroller, I believe, understood the cash flow issues of the city very well. And so that we could continue to deliver city services to our citizens at a pretty normal rate, as opposed to a rate that would be kind of matched with when other taxes like property taxes would be received, which is in the month of December. There was a thought back, I guess, almost 30 years ago that a tax anticipation or tax revenue anticipation note would help us bridge the gap between receiving those property taxes and other taxes so that we could continue to make payroll, number one, for city employees, so they would have some security as to the being paid, our forestry workers, our street repairmen, and all of those people in traffic, and the police and fire. So this is an assurance that there will be no break or delay. And of course, the bills that come with delivering city services through our refuse contracts and other big, huge contracts that we have in the city. So each year we borrow an amount of money that is repaid annually when those taxes come in, and largely your your property taxes and your real estate and personal property taxes are going to come at the end of the year. And for us, in terms of fiscal year, that's mid-year. And so this is what this is about. Many of you who are aldermen and others understand this. President, you've been an alderman as well as the president for however many years. Madam Mayor, you should be very familiar with this. There's no change with this kind of as it's called, tax revenue anticipation notes. Is there
Thank you for that. I am very familiar with it. I just wanted the public who is probably on this to be able to some people might say, well, why is the city borrowing $65 million right now? Your explanation was spot on. And so thank you for that. It's a working capital loan because we got to pay the bills throughout the year. So thank you for that explanation. So there's been a motion and a second. All in favor of passing item number 6, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, everyone voted aye, so that item number 6 passes. Last item on the agenda is item number 7.
I move for adoption of item number 7 as printed on the agenda.
I'll second that. Is there any discussion of item number 7? This is a transfer of $5 million from the parking meter fund to general revenue. This is
I would like to just start by thanking Alderman Jeffrey Boyd for working to get this done, and also the Parking Commission who brought this issue forward. But certainly it would not have happened had not Alderman Boyd stepped up to the plate and worked to identify this additional funding. I don't think it's any surprise to anyone, certainly in the city, but across the state, that we're in trouble and we need additional revenue. And this does not place an undue burden on the Treasurer's office at all, and it helps us meet our base obligations. And I must add that this is the city's money. So if we need our money, we need to step up to the plate and move our money where we need it to serve our constituents. It's not about one person, it's about serving the constituency of the city of St. Louis. So I'm really happy to support this $5 million transfer that was brought forward by Alderman Jeffrey Boyd.
Thank you, President Reed. Is there any other discussion?
I would simply say that the parking meter fund budget, as I understand it, is not taken up by the Board of E&A. This has been traditionally for ever taken up by the Board of Aldermen. So the Board of E&A should not take this up, but rather the Board of Aldermen should be taking this matter up.
I think it's because it's a transfer of funds. It is the attorney still on the phone with us? I know you had a hard time. Mike Garvin, is he still there?
He's not still on the call.
All right. I don't know if Paul could talk to it, speak to it.
Well, we have had a transfer, as you know, last year. I believe there was a $12 million that was solely taken up by the Board of Aldermen and passed. And once it's passed by the board, then of course the Board of E&A can take it up in terms of appropriation. But right now, I believe that is not, is preliminary to be on any E&A agenda because the Board of Aldermen has not acted, not through their committee, nor through the floor. Once it's passed and it's ready, dollars that could be transferred over to general fund as you have here, then the Board of E&A can take up the matter. The Board of E&A does not have jurisdiction to take up the matters of the budget of the parking meter commission fund at all. There's nothing in the law that I'm aware of in the charter nor the state statute that calls for the Board of E&A to act prior to the Board of Aldermen's final ordinance because of course this board is for appropriation purposes. This money is unavailable for any transfer for this board at this time. We transfer all monies that is under the jurisdiction of the Board of E&A. These dollars are not. And I understand you're saying that this is city dollars. I agree, but I just think this is preliminary coming to the Board of E&A is what I'm saying to you. This is preliminary. The Board of Aldermen have not acted.
So
if I could say that the ordinance, the board bill, excuse me, number 13 says an ordinance recommended by the Parking Commission and the Board of Estimate and Apportionment. So it's in the first line of this bill that it would have to also be recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment.
Yeah, and
just simply ask what is the law that says that that is legal.
Yeah, I understand that. Okay. So I don't think there would be any harm in passing this, but
the Board of E&A will have to take this up prior to it passing the full Board of Aldermen, right? And me signing it and Mary, you signing it. It will have to be taken up by the Board of E&A sometime during this time period while it's under discussion and up for consideration for the Board of Aldermen. I don't see how we can do it without some action from the Board of E&A and the Parking Commission. As you stated, it states it in the first paragraph of the bill.
right. So and it certainly would not do any harm for the Board of E&A to pass this. And then if the Board of Aldermen decided something different, well, it would be a moot point. So
yeah,
there is a motion and a second.
So are you saying that the lawyers for the Parking Commission did write this board bill, or is there some lawyer that can speak up to the fact whether this is legal or illegal? I just wanted to just make that point because certainly lawyers do know whether or not the Board of Estimate and Apportionment has jurisdiction at this time. A lawyer that could speak to this that might want to get on the phone and give some explanation, or a board lawyer or some lawyer
Well, just as a general rule, any measures that are taken up by the Board of Aldermen that require E&A's involvement, that happens prior to that bill actually passing the Board of Aldermen.
And what you said, Mr.
So,
President, is absolutely correct. The question is, does this require E&A? And that's the simple question that I have. It is written in the board bill, and the question is it legal? And that's simple. And if it's a yes, then that's great. But if it's not, then let's have an explanation, because I'm not disagreeing with you, but I do disagree that this one right here is timely for the Board of E&A. I think it's preliminary. I think that it should be presented to the board prior to this. So if there's a law, if someone that would want to get on the phone, Madam Mayor, if you can direct the law department to get on, then we can simply, get this answered. It's a real simple question. I have not seen the parking meter budget put to the Board of E&A ever. And so I don't know, Madam Mayor, in your 4 years, 3.5, 4 years, have you, and Mr. President, you've been here 16. This is the first time that I've seen this. I've seen many other board bills that must come to, by the Board of E&A, but the Parking Commission since 1951, I believe it is, isn't that when those state statutes were enacted? That's the first state statute, and of course there are others, but none of them have any representation that the parking meter fund shall go before the Board of E&A that I'm aware of. And I could be wrong, but if there's a lawyer that could speak to that, those statutes are readily available. They're online, as a matter of fact. Does it say somewhere that the Board of E&A should take up matters that are budgetary for the parking meter fund?
Madam Mayor, if you will, I've served on the Board of E&A for, quite a long time. In my recollection, I cannot remember a time where we've had to make a mid-year appropriations from the Treasurer's office with recommendation of the Parking Commission of this sort. But we are living in different times now with COVID-19 and lockdown. I can also tell you it wasn't until this time that I can ever remember having a Zoom conference for the Board of E&A. But I can tell you this, that these things are timely, and this $5 million is needed. The treasurer can take a position that she would like to still keep all that money for herself and do whatever. But we need this to assure the operations of our city. So I'm fully supportive of it. And like I said, the reason we probably haven't seen this is because this is something that we have not done before, where we've directly from the treasurer's office in this manner, right? But it is required, and we have the legal authority to do so. And it's an appropriation. So it's an appropriations bill. So, I'm fully supportive of it. I think, again, I cannot thank Alderman Jeffrey Boyd enough. Whenever you take on these very difficult situations like this, where you have, a person on the other side that for whatever reason, out of politics or whatever, not wanting to support the total operations of the city, these things can be difficult. It makes it difficult on all ends. But I can tell you that even once we transfer this $5 million, there's still 22.8 million sitting there. So we're not putting an undue burden on anyone. And this, again, is the city's money.
It's all the people's money who paid all those meters and all those parking tickets, right?
Yeah.
And now we're going to try to use it to provide some service to them.
Yeah, it's a
Well, I am aware of opposition on the Board of Aldermen, as I did hear yesterday at the meeting at the Ways and Means, and there's opposition to this actual transfer of funds in this manner and what it is for. I don't know then, Mr. President, if you're acting prematurely so that you could gain or garner support from the Board of E&A, knowing that you do not have support for this transfer, as this is not an appropriation. It does say transfer. If it did say mid-year appropriation, that would have meant that the Board of Aldermen would have passed this measure, and this E&A then could take it up. I believe both you and Madam Mayor understand the difference between a transfer that's before you and appropriation that is not before you and that has not been approved by the Board of Aldermen. Do not want us to mince words and cause the public to believe that we're taking up an appropriation. This is a transfer. It is not legal, as you're stating, Mr. President, and I do believe that's why none of the lawyers are getting on the line who are here at work or on this Zoom call. They say were signed up earlier. I still see Michael Garvin, who was there. However, if a lawyer could speak to this, as I've asked them to do, then we could get this matter settled, because this is not an appropriation. It would become one once the board would finally pass, and then we move forward. So am I saying something that's foreign to any of you? No, I just think that we need to not pass something that should be taken up by the Board of Aldermen. And then afterwards, it should be taken up by the Board of E&A.
Yeah.
I think that's what.
So, Madam Comptroller, I think I see Julian Bush. Is that you, Julian?
It is me. I did not know that I was appearing. I was tuning in to listen. Here I am. Hello,
You're
everybody.
appearing. Just the top of your head is appearing, and I think Michael Garvin may also be on this call. So if either of you would like to address this, I guess the only thing that I would say before you address this is that time is of the essence on this bill. We're facing massive budget revenue shortfalls on the budget, and so the board bill, which is before us here, does reference the Board of Estimate and Apportionment in two places with an emergency clause on the bill. So happy to hear your legal opinions or advice.
I'll tell you, I had to get off of that call, so I'm not, I just got back on, so I'm not sure what the topic is, to be honest.
So the topic is the bill, board bill number 13, which is to transfer $5 million from the parking meter fund to the general reserve fund of the city of St. Louis to help offset expenditures from the general reserve fund necessitated by COVID-19 pandemic and the extraordinary costs incurred by the city. Blah, blah, blah. That's the bill. And the comptroller, and I'll paraphrase this, Madam Comptroller, is wondering if it is legal for the Board of Estimate and Apportionment to pass this prior to the Board of Aldermen passing it.
Well, that is not the question. The question is, does the Board of Estimate and Apportionment take up the parking meter fund budget? And as I understand, they do not. And in this case, which we have had President Set, which was just last year with the $12 million transfer that was taken up during the budget at the Board of Aldermen. And then the E&A board would take it up as an appropriation following it. I do not believe the Board of E&A can appropriate parking meter funds and or transfers. So that is what we have before us, even though this is written to include, the board bill is written to include the Board of Estimate and Apportionment. I am saying it is inappropriate because I do not know of where the Board of Estimate and Apportionment takes up matters of budgetary matters prior to action by the Board of Aldermen.
And just as a point of clarification, the Board of Aldermen has already taken action. I know the Madam Comptroller said that she was over at Ways and Means and didn't think we'd have the votes, but the board bill has already been in committee. It's been discussed. It's been passed out of committee, second read, and it's coming up for perfection at the Board of Aldermen. And Madam Mayor, you know, before we perfect and third reading final passage, if the Board of E&A has to take something up, that's when they take it up. Otherwise, the bill has to lay over at the Board of Aldermen and be put on the informal calendar. That would be just tragic for our city, considering the great need and all the pressures that we have on our budget today because of COVID-19. And again, it's just absolutely shameful that the treasurer is going through these lengths and playing politics at this level when so much is at stake. And I cannot, I'm just completely offended that the people in our city are suffering right now, right? Their families all over the city suffering right now. And we need to transfer this money. And we need this money to be ready to address this big hole that we have in our budget so that we can deliver the services to the city. It's not about the treasurer. It's about the residents of the city of St. Louis, the people that went to the polls and voted.
On the legal issue, the Parking Commission has already approved the transfer of the $5 million.
Yeah.
So I didn't draft this ordinance, but I believe what Alderman Boyd was intending to do was after the Parking Commission approved the transfer, that he thought he should get an ordinance recommended by E&A to transfer the funds to the general reserve prior to the end of the budget year. It's not, he didn't, I don't think he intended for it to be part of the next year's budget.
If I could supplement Mike's remarks, and I put these remarks forward with a little bit of trepidation because I really haven't studied it, but the ordinances that regulate the Parking Commission and the parking meter fund provide that the budget of the Parking Commission should be, the budget of the parking division is prepared and recommended by the Parking Commission. That proposed budget goes to the Board of Aldermen for its approval. And that budget would include the transfer of funds from the parking meter fund to the city general revenues if the Parking Commission so decided. There's nothing in the ordinances that provide for a role for the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, but as you know, the charter supersedes the ordinances, and the charter requires all budgets to be recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment. So if this resolution is recommending a budget of the Parking Commission, including the transfer of money, it's perfectly appropriate that it go before the Board of Estimate and Apportionment to get its concurrence with whatever the Board of Aldermen are going to do. So if I understand the situation correctly, and I may not, the issue of the Parking Commission's budget, including transferring money to the general fund from the parking meter fund, is properly before the Board of Estimate and Apportionment because it requires the concurrence of the Board of Aldermen and the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, just like any other city appropriation and budget.
Exactly. Thank you. I think that the city councilor explained it exactly correct. That is the interpretation of the Board of Aldermen. And I think it's just absolutely critical that we move forward with item number 7 today.
So I think item number 7, there's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Well, I will finally say that I did hear the president of the board say that this money would be moved for expenditures or to offset expenditures. I do see that, but I do not see how money's going to the reserve fund then would be offsetting in the expenditures. The reserve fund is what it is. It's a reserve fund that has not been appropriated. This money, this $5 million will not be appropriated, or this action today does not appropriate this $5 million and make it available for spending on any city services. So I do want to make that clear. A lot of times people, put out there that this is going to happen and that the families are waiting. If this is approved today, this does not make this money ready for spending according to what the definition of a general fund reserve fund is. A general fund reserve fund is not a place where the expenditures are readily available and have been appropriated or will be appropriated for expending these funds. So I also wanted to make that clear so that families would not believe that we are including an additional amount of money that has been appropriated. Even this board bill does not speak or have the word of this fund, it's not worded to say that this transfer is appropriated for expending or expenditures on behalf of the delivery of city services to the citizens. So it's not saying that whatsoever. It's saying that it would be a transfer, and it does not really speak clearly as to whether or not it is appropriate that this is before the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, because as the City Council stated, that the Parking Commission, along with the Board of Aldermen, is sufficient that this would be taken up, and that is what I have said all along. But the fact that it is before the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, which I'm hearing is, as the mayor has stated earlier, is not so bad or it's okay. It's just following that this is something that is not necessary is where I was saying it from the very beginning. This, whether it's passed here or not, does not negate the fact that it can be finally.
We just gave her authority to overspend the accounts as needed for the expenses for the rest of the fiscal year. Maybe I should point that out to her.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, just a couple of points. First, Madam Comptroller, I think any reasonable person, I think it's, should just being reasonable, we know that it's highly unlikely that we will not have to dip into our reserve fund, right? And we know that with upwards of $50, $60 million hole in our budget, not understanding what our revenue outlook truly is going to look like across the next few months, that we need more money in our general reserve. So by making this transfer and getting the funds over there, that is positioning those funds to be available to address the issues of city services directly, right? So for the families, I can tell them, yes, we have now put an additional $5 million in place that will be able to help us. I can also tell the city employees, yes, we have put additional $5 million in place so that we will have a little more funds and a little more cushion, not to have to do furloughs and not to have to do layoffs and not to have to do, any of those things, right? And that they can count on the city being there for them, right? So we have additional expenses. And I'm gonna say it again, the treasurer should be, this is shameful that there is an intentional lobbying effort to stop the transfer of funds that we need in a time like this when the city's in such dire straits. And this is $5 million. She's still sitting on $22.8 million. So I'm very proud of this action. I think it needs to move forward. And I am telling people that, yes, we have added another $5 million over to help us through this difficult time.
And if I might point out, on item number 5 today, we did give the comptroller approval to overspend accounts as needed to meet the city's fiscal obligation or financial obligation. So that certainly would be good for this $5 million over in the city's budget. So there is a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, all in favor of passing item number 7? Aye. I'm sorry, President Reed, did you vote?
Yeah, I voted aye.
Aye. Comptroller Green?
I'm voting no.
Okay. I'm voting aye. So this item number 7 does pass. Thank you all. That concludes the items presented for the first time. Are there any additional items that the board may wish to discuss?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I have an item. I have a letter that I'd like to present this time. And I think everyone has been emailed the letter.
What I'm sorry, I don't know if is the letter just recently come in?
I believe so. Let me pause and go check.
Hang on, I'll look in my inbox while we're speaking. And who's the letter? Is it from your office?
Yeah.
Okay, let me look.
2:34. 2:34 p.m.
Okay, yes. Madam Comptroller, there was an email that came in at 2:34 today. I'm opening it now.
Okay, I'm back. And yes, that is the additional item.
You want to, I'm reading this on my phone. So would you want to tell us about this, what your request?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I will. I would like to respectfully request that the Board of Estimate and Apportionment would consider utilizing FEMA reimbursement funds instead of the city reserve funds as a replacement for the $1 million being allocated for affordable housing. In addition, please consider making this increase to affordable housing a permanent adjustment for future budgets. Thank you for your kind consideration of this matter.
Okay.
Now, the discussion point that I will make here is FEMA reimbursement funds are coming to support us through this pandemic. And it is a form of replacing revenues that we all recognize as important
FEMA funds
for
be used to
the
replace
city
revenue.
of St. Louis.
I'm on mute.
The city does need support for affordable housing as well as
Mike is on.
FEMA funds that will be coming in the form of revenues, replacement revenues. The reserve fund, 1 million that was passed last E&A meeting is a one-time adjustment for affordable housing. This letter is asking that we will consider the use of FEMA revenues, and I believe this would make it possible for a permanent increase for affordable housing going forward. The failure of using FEMA funds instead of the city reserve funds would send the signal that the city is only interested in a one-time increase in the affordable housing fund, when I'm asking that we would look at a permanent increase of funding for affordable housing. In this case, we would be using the FEMA dollars as the start of such an increase in affordable housing funds. So this is a simple letter to ask the Board of Estimate and Apportionment to consider this. Of course, this is not an item that you've had time to think about and pass for approval today. This is not, I'm not asking for a motion to approve, but I believe it's a recommendation that certainly should be set forth by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment as we move forward with dealing with how we're going to reopen the city, how we're going to answer people who are in dire need of affordable housing, and how are we going to go forward in the aftermath of the pandemic. We need to be cognizant that affordable housing for the next several years and not months is going to be needed. An increase in affordable housing is something that we can certainly accommodate if we are looking at the use of how to spend those FEMA funds, including that 1 million that was previously approved to come out of the reserve and now replacing it with FEMA funds instead. I think we need to be looking at that. This is a recommendation from the Finance Committee in the Comptroller's office. We believe this is the right thing to do. It is not a political thing. It is a fiscally responsible action that I'm asking the Board of Estimate and Apportionment to take today under consideration.
Thank you, Madam Comptroller. I am just reading this letter. I got it about 2:34 today. Let me just say that, as you know, we're very committed to providing the $6 million in funding to the Affordable Housing Commission. The FEMA funds are for some reimbursement of directly related COVID funds. But what I think we should do here is you're suggesting that rather than take it out of the city's budget, we should go ahead and take it or try to get reimbursed for it from FEMA. That's a question that we can take up if it's allowable under those funds.
Again, thank you, Madam Mayor, for your comments. And I do say to you that the committee has talked about this. We do know that this is allowable. We will be looking at more areas that's allowable, but it's up to this city as to whether we are going to accommodate the affordable housing in a way that is not only meaningful, but substantial, as well as there's some permanence to the increase of the former $5 million budget. We're looking at increasing it by $1 million, as you know. Certainly, if we start with the FEMA funds, then certainly we can look at an annual appropriation of $6+ million in the future if we are really going to do the work that's necessary for increasing the affordable housing needs, dollars that are needed for affordable housing. So that's the issue here. It's something that we believe, and further, the committee believes that, when you're talking to rating agencies and when you're looking at the fiscal responsible thing to do, it's more fiscally responsible to use ready revenue, whether they're replacement revenues or not, than to dip in to reserve funds. Reserve funds are for what they are meant to be. The president did mention that there would be furloughs considered and all those kinds of things in the future. And we do have those kinds of things on the budget that Paul has presented. And all you have to do is go back and look. He presented that budget to the Board of Aldermen May 1st, and furloughs was on that list. So it's a serious matter when you're talking about reserves and what they're used for. And when we can recommend to the rating agencies that we're going to consider using our revenues instead of our reserves.
What's my choice?
A difference.
Thank you, Madam Comptroller. I wasn't aware of the Finance Committee. That's a committee, I guess, within your office. That's great. We will take a look at this. There are, as you know, these federal funds, there are many regulations. We want to take advantage of absolutely as much in federal funding reimbursement as we can. To date, none of the federal funds have allowed us to use them for revenue replacement, but they are allowing us to use them for reimbursement of COVID-related expenses. So we will take a serious look at this. And if there's any way that this can happen, that's what we'll do. So are there any other items for discussion? Okay.
I have none.
Madam Comptroller, did you have something?
I have none, no additional.
Thank you. All right, I would be happy to have a motion to adjourn.
Move that we adjourn this session of the Board of E&A.
We have a motion to adjourn. We have a second. All in favor of adjourning, please say aye. Aye. Okay, thank you all.
Well,
Meeting is adjourned.
thank you.